Hi, everybody. Sorry for that rough start. I'm having a little trouble tonight, but I'll get myself together. Just give me a couple moments here. I just want to open up the chat over here on Facebook and YouTube so I can say hi to everyone. If I can find it, just hold on a second here. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble tonight. Everybody just give me a second here to figure out why I can't find this. And what happened to my chat window? Oh, I don't know where my chat is. I can see that you're there on Facebook and YouTube. So if you're there, hi. But I'm having trouble finding the chat, and I can see some of you here on Zoom. Hello to you who are on Zoom. And just give me a second here to figure out why I cannot find this chat window on Restream, which is making me feel really dumb tonight that I can't find it. Let me just try something else here. Please just bear with me for a second while I am acting stupid. I hope everybody's having a great evening. As you can see, I'm a little discombobulated here. Let's see if this works. No. Well, I can't find my chat window. I'm so sorry that I can't find it tonight so that I can see your messages to me and respond to your messages. Let me try one more thing. Here we go. I found it. Okay, so if you're on Facebook and YouTube, say hi to me. Now I can see you. Oh, what a crappy start. That rustling you hear in the background is Mr. Q making noise. Okay, people can see the chat. People can, guess you can hear me. So hello to everyone. It's great to see you tonight. Even if I am a little off my game, I apologize for that. It's been an interesting day, and I'm sort of getting myself together for you guys tonight. And I would like to, of course, say hello and to say that I'm looking a little bit different tonight because I made a joke on social media that I wanted to look a little older. I wanted to be a little bit of an older Mrs. Q. So I decided to wear really minimal makeup tonight. So I'm really only wearing the makeup that someone might have been wearing at the time. So I have a little bit of stain on my eyebrows and on my eyelids. I have on the white cornstarch powder and a little bit of coloring on my cheek and a little bit of berry coloring on my lips. And honestly, I thought I would look a lot older than this. This is just my own hair in a bonnet. I really thought I would look a lot older than this. I'm looking better than I thought I would. So this turned out to be okay. So I was hoping to be a little bit older Mrs. Q tonight. So hi, everybody. Let's see. We have the Bronx. Who else is here? We have the Bronx. We have people from everywhere, from Ohio. Oh, we have the Langdons. This is great. Indiana, excellent. It's great to see everybody, and of course to you guys on Zoom. Hello to you guys. They're my regulars on Zoom as well. So tonight I'm going to talk about a really scandalous story. But first, I want to thank you all for following me all this time. And I'm going to do something I haven't done in a while, and that is to ask you that if you are enjoying Mrs. Q Live, to please consider supporting my effort here. Hold on, I'm sliding off my chair. Also, I have 2 pillows on my chair because I'm so short. I can't get up tall enough. To please support my effort. I thought tours were going to be really great this year, and the tour season is crummy and there's almost nothing booked for the summer. So if you're enjoying Mrs. Q Live, please consider sending me a small donation, either on PayPal. You can do paypal.me, Patriot Tours, or on Venmo on Patriot Tours NYC. And also I have a Patreon account, Mrs. Q NYC. So take a look at those, and I'll show them again later toward the end. And hopefully if you're liking Mrs. Q, you'll send me a little donation to help me pay for the costs of streaming every week, because there are some small costs incurred. So that would be really great if you'd like to do that. So thanks very much for your support all this time. I've been doing Mrs. Q now for more than 2 years. So this is incredible that so many of you are still joining me. Thank you. And hello to Virginia as well. And so let's get on with our subject tonight. We'll go back to the living room. Oh, let's go to this one. I think this one will be better. So our subject tonight is about a scandalous story from New York in the 1790s. And I wanted to look a little old tonight because by the 1790s, Mrs. Q, let me just go through years here. Mrs. Q is probably getting to be around 60 years old by the 1790s. So I probably should have put on my gray and white wig, but I didn't have time. I've been doing a lot of gardening today. So Mrs. Q is getting quite up there by this time, by the turn of the century. And so we're reflecting tonight on a book that has appeared in New York in 1795, and that book is called Charlotte Temple, and you see the cover of it right here behind me. And Charlotte Temple is written by a lady named Susanna Rawson, who's a very successful author in England, and she is quite a unique lady in that she appears on the stage, she writes plays, and she also writes novels. And this novel is sort of the what do they call it? The cautionary tale type of novel, popular in the 1790s among women and young women as well. And Charlotte Temple, and you see, and the story of Lieutenant Montreville. So this is in the 1790s, a huge hit in the city of New York. It's a bestseller, as a matter of fact. Not only is it a bestseller, but it is the subject of massive gossip and speculation over whether or not this is based on a true story. So let me tell you first, with my microphone here a second, so it's in a better spot. So let me tell you first about Charlotte Temple, the novel. So Charlotte Temple is the novel, as I mentioned, written by Susanna Rawson, and it follows the story of Charlotte Temple, Lieutenant Montreville, Mademoiselle LaRue, who, of course, since she's French, you know, is going to be the villain of our story tonight, and a Captain Balcour, a friend of Lieutenant Montreville's. Charlotte Temple is the protagonist of our story. And when our story begins, Charlotte Temple is 15 or 16 years old, and she's in a boarding school in London. She's from the country. She's from a very good family. And Mrs. Rawson tells us that she is very tall and quite elegant and beautiful and fine in her manners. And one Sunday in church, she's sitting with her friends and their instructor in French, Mademoiselle LaRue, and they see a couple of very handsome officers sitting across in the church from them, and that would be Captain Balcour and Lieutenant Montreville, and they all smile at each other, and it seems that Balcour knows Mademoiselle LaRue and makes introductions among all four. So this is where Miss Temple meets the dashing and handsome Lieutenant Montreville. And they start meeting, which of course is against the rules. The girls in the boarding schools are not supposed to be meeting with any men, gentlemen, officers, men of any kind. Balance this out a little bit over my pretty little ruffles here. Are not supposed to be meeting unchaperoned with gentlemen of any kind, but they begin sneaking out and meeting with these two men, and they put together a plan to go to America together. It seems that the two officers are being relocated to the city of New York in the 1760s, and I think this year is going to be 1764. And Charlotte Temple, as much as she loves her parents, she is an only child, agrees to set off with Lieutenant Montreville, and she also agrees not to tell her parents she's going. So very like cloak and dagger, she and Mademoiselle LaRue join the two officers, and they get on a ship and off to New York they come. So now they're in New York. Well, on the way here on a ship, Mademoiselle LaRue starts shall we say, flirting with a gentleman on the ship by the name of Mr. Creighton, who lives in New York. And he is a widower, and he becomes quite smitten with Mademoiselle Leroux, and they strike up quite an intimate relationship on this ship, so that when they get to New York, he marries her, and she becomes Mrs. Creighton of New York. Now, poor Charlotte, or Miss Temple, I should say, cannot live in the barracks with Lieutenant Montreville, so he rents a room for her on a farm out of town. Now, some of you might know that in 1794, New York City is quite small. It only goes as far north as Chambers Street, just a little under a mile from the tip of the island, and north of that, where your Chinatown is in your time, is the farming area, and that is where Miss Temple takes her room to rent on a local farm. And Lieutenant Montreville meets with her there regularly, and they go walking through the woods and along the farm roads, but he's very careful and cautious about taking her into New York. And that could be because he is already seeing the daughter of a wealthy, loyal family in New York City while he's still seeing Charlotte. And he ultimately decides to leave Charlotte for this woman, very wealthy woman, whose father even owns an island in the East River that Lieutenant Montreville will become his in the future. And so Charlotte is left alone, and Montreville leaves money with Balcour to continue supporting Charlotte, which Balcour keeps for himself. So young Miss Temple finds herself unable to pay her rent and expecting a child, and is desperate now for someone to take care of her. She has no one to take care of her. In the process, out in the country, she has befriended a woman, a Mrs. Beauchamp, who kind of has taken pity on her and sees her as a very lonely and frightened young girl. Of course, Mrs. Beauchamp does not know about Charlotte's condition yet, and she convinces Charlotte to write to her parents. And of course, you know, it takes a long time for letters to get across the Atlantic to London. So now Charlotte is expelled or evicted from her room on the farm, and in the big climax of the book, she is walking down the Broadway in the pouring rain and mud, knocking on doors, begging people to come to her aid. And of course, no one will. Well, the new Mrs. Creighton opens her door, and Charlotte recognizes her immediately as the former Mademoiselle Leroux. And although Mrs. Creighton doesn't want to take care of her, she's afraid that if she comes in, that her new husband will find out the role she had in Miss Temple's downfall. So instead, she finds a place for her and hires a nurse to care for Charlotte, to try to help her, as Charlotte is now not only expecting, but she is sick. At some point, Madame Beauchamp, Mrs. Beauchamp, finds out about this and recognizes the girl in the boarding house under the nurse's care as this young woman she knew from her country home, her farm home. And she takes Charlotte in and makes sure a letter gets home to her parents. I don't recall if she writes the letter earlier or if she writes the letter at this time. And eventually, of course, her parents get the letter. Well, Charlotte finds out while she's staying with Mrs. Beauchamp that her husband has married a Mademoiselle Leroux, that her father, has married a Mademoiselle Leroux. Mrs. Beauchamp is the daughter of Mr. Creighton, the widower that Mademoiselle Leroux seduced on the ship and got to marry him. And at this time, Mrs. Beauchamp learns the entire story of the way Mademoiselle Leroux, Captain, I've forgotten his name. There's all these names I can't remember. The Captain Balcour and Lieutenant Montreville, how they all coerced Miss Temple into coming to New York with them. So now she knows the whole story and spills the beans to her father, who kicks out Leroux. And in the meantime, Charlotte goes into labor having her child right about the same time that her father arrives in New York. And to make it very dramatic, Charlotte dies in her father's arms right after she gives birth to a daughter. And her father brings the daughter back to London in order to raise her as his own. And her name is Lucy, and she will be Lucy Temple. Now, after all of this unfolds, Lieutenant Montreville, who's been away for some time on duty, returns to New York and finds out what Balcour did, that he kept the money rather than giving it to Charlotte, and shoots him and kills him in a duel. Although Montreville himself will live a lifetime of guilt over what happened to young Charlotte Temple, even though he does marry and live a very wealthy and good life with that loyalist daughter. So to all of us in New York, when this book appeared, those of us old enough, of course, to remember, the younger people would not know the story, but those of us like me and my sister, Mrs. Van R., and my friend, Mrs. R., immediately recognized this as the story of Captain John Montresor. Captain John Montresor was a very prominent engineer in the British Corps. He was known as a fine map maker, cartographer. He also helped build all kinds of forts and fortifications, and happened to also be the first cousin of the author Susanna Rawson. So the real story is almost more complicated and fascinating and shocking than the fiction story. So we all remembered that John Montresor had had a few instances of his own with unmarried ladies in America. And you might remember that during the Revolutionary War period, there was an island in the East River that he owned, Montresor's Island, which you in the future know as Randall's Island, and that John Montresor did marry a very wealthy and prominent lady. Her name was Frances Tucker, and she was the stepdaughter of Trinity Church's rector, the Reverend Auchmuty, who some of you might remember as the Reverend of Trinity Church when they opened King's College, and William Livingston and his two lawyer partners argued vociferously against the Anglican school. So that was Reverend Auchmuty. That is her stepfather. So he marries Miss Tucker, who is very wealthy, and they go on later and move to England, where they have quite a few children together. The only thing, though, it seems that Captain Montresor left some children behind in America, especially during the French and Indian War, where he had a child with a Mohawk Valley lady who became known as Frances Allen, the second wife of that great patriot, Ethan Allen. Her father was Captain John Montresor. Her mother was a single woman living in the Mohawk Valley at the time. Not only that, Captain Montresor was father to an English girl as well, who he left money to her mother to care for her. A daughter, I think, of an English farmer near his estate in England. So, was Mrs. Rawson writing about her cousin? Well, she doesn't say directly, but she sort of indicates that this is a cautionary tale, she says, to the young ladies who may be enraptured by the handsome officers and their dashing ways and interesting stories of traveling abroad. She says this is to remind the young ladies that they have only their virtue with which to bargain for their future, that their virtue is the thing that men seek, and that finding the right man requires preserving that virtue until you find men who will bargain amongst each other until you find the best offer for your virtue, or being a wife, she's saying, or your virtue, and that you should never give up your virtue prematurely and without the promise of marriage. So she tells this very sorrowful story about a young girl who's taken in, becomes pregnant, and dies in childbirth. And in the story, by the way, Charlotte Temple is buried in Trinity Graveyard. Now, no one could recall that John Montresor had, a mistress in New York who died in childbirth and was buried in the graveyard. So that we all, knew was a fictitious part of the story to make it more dramatic. But he did have these other dalliances that he seemed to admit to, Ethan Allen's wife and the girl in England. And he is not the only one. Mrs. Rawson also suggests that her book is partially based on the exploits of a British general named John Burgoyne, who apparently, when he was a soldier here in the French and Indian War, was up to the same kinds of mischief with single innocent girls in America. So we have Captain John Montresor and General John Burgoyne. Now, Captain Montresor was not active in the Revolutionary War. By then he had retired. But that island, Montresor's Island, belonged to his wife's family, which he inherited. And it was called Montresor's Island until after the war. No, I'm sorry. John Montresor was active during the Revolutionary War. He was here drawing maps. I'm mistaken. He went to England, returned for the war, and returned to England. He drew a number of important Revolutionary War maps for the English. And during that time, lived on his island, Montresor's Island. After the American Revolution, of course, he left, and the island was sold for a very small fee to a farmer named John Randall. And it wasn't until recently, the 20th century, New York time, that Randall's family sold it to the city of New York, but it still bears the name. The condition was they would sell it if it continued to bear the name of Randall's Island for their ancestor, the farmer John Randall. So that's this convoluted story. Now, Mrs. Rawson herself is an extraordinary lady in the 1790s, actually performing on the stage, writing plays not only for herself, but other traveling theater groups, writing novels, and so blatantly writing a novel about her own cousin, Captain John Montresor, and suggesting that the great general Johnny Burgoyne, also known as Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, may also have been an influence for this wonderful book. It is still in print in your time. I highly recommend it. It is a wonderful story. You can read it in just a couple of days. It's not very long, but it falls into that genre of cautionary tales that were so popular in the 1790s among ladies, young ladies, older ladies. And we see from some of the library records that some of the gentlemen read them as well, likely to be able to talk to women at parties about, these popular books. Now, in your time, there is a grave in Trinity Graveyard with the name Charlotte Temple carved into it. Trinity Church says that the name was carved by a stonemason working on the church, and that he did it mischievously. And there is another name on the stone that has been scratched off, and then Charlotte Temple is carved beneath it. But my question would be that why would a random stonemason know the story of Charlotte Temple and carve it on that stone? Another story says that the stone was placed there by P.T. Barnum as a publicity stunt, Charlotte Temple, that she really was buried there. And other stories say that the stone belongs to a young woman named Charlotte Stanley, which just might be the name of the young lady in New York that Captain John Montresor had his secret dalliance with and left behind, expecting a baby. So some believe that in that grave at Trinity Church is actually the body of Charlotte Stanley, and that is the name that's scratched off to keep her anonymous, and the name Charlotte Temple added instead. Personally, I cannot say, but it is a fascinating story of a scandal, and I give great honor to Mrs. Rawson for having the bravery to not only write under her own name, she does not write under a male pseudonym, she writes under her own name, and to write a book that would be so recognized in New York as being about her cousin, Captain John Montresor. So I hope that I told that story in an understandable manner for you tonight. It's been a long day for me. I've been doing a lot of outdoor gardening and other things. And some of you might know that Mr. Q and I are, preparing to add another dog companion to our family. So, I've been doing a lot of preparation and shopping for his arrival, which is very soon. So I usually have this story, pretty set in my mind because I've told it so many hundreds of times. So I hope that it was understandable. I recommend You can get Charlotte Temple. I think there's a Kindle edition. You can probably get a very inexpensive Kindle edition and read it. It's very entertaining. And if you've been on my Revolutionary War tour or my Hamilton and Burr tour, and you've seen the map that I show on that tour by Captain John Montresor, that is the man in Charlotte Temple. So it might make it even more interesting to you if you've been on one of my tours. And by the way, if you're coming to New York, please take one of my tours. I need customers very much, as it is very slow, as you can imagine, with so much bad press about the city. I'm sorry about that. And so again, I'll show you this. If you're enjoying Mrs. Q and would like to donate some money to me. The other thing you can do is buy one of my books about Theodosia Burr. You can buy a signed copy directly from me. You can email me if you'd like to do that, or contact me on social media. That's another great way to support my work, is to buy my book about Theodosia Burr. It's a great, great gift for anyone in their teens who is just struggling with what it's like to be a teenager, and struggling to be different and unique at a time in your life when there's a lot of pressure to conform. So even in the 1790s, there were people kind of swimming against the stream, so to speak. It's a lovely story, and about New York City and our nation. Let's see. Long ago in a galaxy far away. I haven't done, yes, I have not. On YouTube, I'm getting a question about doing live streams, touring my locations. That is true. And that is because I have been doing lately a lot of school field trips, which is really nice. New York City school students from 4th to 7th grade. I've been doing a lot of school tours, which is very nice and fun. And I've done a number of private tours for return customers, but as for regular new customers, I have virtually none. So that's why I'm asking you for your support. Mrs. McCabe says on Zoom, a friend of mine is going to NYC in July and asked me to refresh his memory about your name. He took one of my tours a few years ago and enjoyed it tremendously. So look out for Danny Mac. I remember Danny Mac, Mrs. McCabe, coming on my tour. Thank you very much. Tell him I would love to see him again. He's very welcome to join me. So if you do know people coming who are brave enough to come, please ask them to take one of my tours. I am going to start releasing some paid videos for you to watch. So some of my more better edited and created videos, and they will be for sale soon as well, to try to help to support my history habit. And thanks all of you for watching and for supporting me as you have. Thanks those of you who are watching who came on my tour because you've been watching. That's always wonderful too. And I always enjoy hearing from all of you, and I enjoy meeting you if you're coming to New York City. And if you are someplace and you would like to have me come and speak about my book about Theodosia Burr, I would love to do that as well. So contact me if you belong to a local organization, historical organization, the DAR, the SAR, or any of those, and you think your members would like to hear me speak about Theodosia Burr. Get in touch with me. I'd be happy to come and speak about my book. So thank you to all of you tonight. And in a few weeks, I will have our new doggy to introduce to you, Quintus Fabius Maximus Q. And some of you may know that that is for the great Roman politician Fabius the Delayer. And we'll just be calling him Quintus because that's a really big name. But since we're all history geeks here, we have to pick a great history name. So thank you all again very much. And I will see you next week. Let's see, somebody will be in New York City in October. We'll check out my tours. Please do, Ms. Wade, please do. I'd appreciate it so much. And as always, if you're coming and the tour you want to take is not being given on the day you're available, email me. I will adjust the schedule. I do it all the time for people. I can adjust the time and the day for you. So just get in touch with me if your schedule doesn't work out with what you see on the tour calendar. Mrs. McCabe loves the tale. I knew you would love it, Mrs. McCabe. It's a great tale. And all of you young ladies out there, remember the lesson of Charlotte Temple: to secure your virtue, the best bargaining tool and the best power you have. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next week. Have a wonderful week. Till next time.